Washington must face his greatest challenge as leader. He makes his winter camp in Pennsylvania, a place called Valley Forge. In freezing temperatures, the rebels build 900 huts in just 40 days. Each houses a dozen men.
He has an army of 14,000 men and no houses. And the Continental Congress has failed to provide him with resources. And by willpower, by courage, by leadership, by cajoling, he has to hold the army together in the middle of a terrible winter.
Joseph Plum Martin, veteran of the Battle of New York, is at Valley Forge. It's a desolate place.
We're now in a truly forlorn condition. No clothing, no provisions, and as disheartened as can be. Our prospect is indeed dreary.
Right, soldier. It's gonna hurt a bit, all right? You just grit your teeth.
Surgeon Albigence Waldo watches Washington's army head toward crisis.
The army, which has been surprisingly healthy, now begins to grow sickly from the fatigues they have suffered from this campaign. If we don't keep this clean, we're going to be right back in here.
A fifth of the soldiers have no shoes. With little clean water, dysentery spreads through the camp. Within weeks, 2,000 men are sick, and they run out of meat. Down to their last 25 barrels of flour, the men survive on fire cake, a mixture of flour and water. The rebel army is a melting pot. As many as 60% of recruits are convicts, freed slaves, and immigrants. But Washington's leadership inspires unruly men to stay in line.
What he had was a confidence that if you want freedom, this is what it's going to take. It's going to take sacrifice. It's going to take blood. It's going to take cold winters at Valley Forge. It's going to take losses.
General Washington, he was a great general to be able to uplift his army during Valley Forge during that winter and still be able to fight. I wish I would have been there. I wish I could have fought for him, because I damn sure would have.
But Washington's army soon faces an enemy far more lethal than the British. Smallpox. The revolution breaks out during the worst smallpox epidemic in U.S. history. The deadly airborne virus spreads through the British prison ships. Isolated from the disease for generations, the American colonists have little resistance to it, and there's no cure. Victims break out in blisters and sores. The virus spreads through the blood, invading healthy cells which it kills, producing more of the virus in the process. 4 in 10 victims die. Once smallpox arrives at Valley Forge, it spreads through the cramped huts like wildfire. Washington survived smallpox as a child. Now he decides to take a gamble with one of the most daring experiments in U.S. military history. Surgeons have learned about inoculation from African slaves. They harvest pus from a smallpox victim. And smear the live virus into cuts on the skin of a healthy patient. The inoculation spreads the infection, but at a slower rate. A week after exposure, the victim's white blood cells create antibodies. These attack and kill the virus that causes smallpox before the disease can spread. But it's a dangerous race against time. To survive, the patient's immune system has to work faster than the virus, or it'll run out of control. 1 in 50 of those inoculated will die. But Washington's gamble pays off. New cases of smallpox fall from several thousand to just a few dozen. But to win the war against the British, Washington turns to an unlikely hero to transform his ragtag militia into a formidable fighting machine. 1778. George Washington's Patriot Army survives a hard winter and an outbreak of smallpox at Valley Forge. Now, Washington introduces a new recruit who will change the course of the war. Baron von Steuben is an ex-Prussian army officer, an elite soldier whose career is said to have been ruined by his homosexuality. But Washington makes him one of the most powerful men in his command.
Washington was a genius in taking people in who didn't seem like they could achieve great things, but under him, they rose to the challenge, they rose to the occasion. And that's what great leaders do.
Von Steuben's task, reinvent the demoralized Patriot Army so they can take on the British in a close fight.
Our arms are in horrible condition, covered with rust. Our men are literally naked, some to the fullest extent of the word.
Von Steuben starts by drilling discipline into Washington's ragtag recruits. The men are unlike any he has ever trained before.
The genius of this nation is not in the least to be compared with that of the Prussians or Austrians or French. You say to your soldier, do this, and he does it. But here, I am obliged to say, this is the reason why you ought to do that, and then he does it.
Von Steuben brings order, discipline, and hygiene to Valley Forge. He moves latrines away from living quarters, rebuilds the kitchens on the opposite side of the camp, and organizes housing according to regiments and companies. His biggest contribution, he writes a manual on military training with methods that are still in use today.
Faster!
Von Steuben drills European battle tactics into an elite corps of 100 men.
Up, soldier! Move!
Each will train 100 more.
Up!
He also teaches them a new and deadly weapon, the bayonet. Bayonet fighting will prove pivotal in the battles ahead. Bayonets allow rifles to double as spears, making close hand-to-hand combat possible without reloading. But it's not just new weapons and skills von Steuben gives the Patriots. It's a new attitude.
You know, we can talk about weapons and how certain weapons change the face of warfare, which is absolutely true. But the greatest weapon that you could ever have is right up here.
Men like Plum Martin leave Valley Forge highly skilled killers.